It wasn't until I left college that I realized that mathematics was a language, and it was a language that was, really eloquent.
That's a good way to put it.
Adam, if industrial design were a pile of laser-cut Pop-Tarts, you would be the liquid sugar used to stabilize the rinse bin.
Welcome to Engineer versus Design.
The podcast.
For engineers, designers, makers, bakers, and personal manufacturing shakers. My name is Adam, industrial designer of CADjunkie.com.
And my name is Josh, mechanical engineer of SolidSmack.com. Each week's show comes in 3 evenly sliced halves. This week we're talking creating, making, and personal...
As in personal.
Manufacturing. Start with a very brief history of personal manufacturing with the Back Smack, courtesy of SolidSmack.com.
Followed by design process tips, tricks, and Q&A compliments of CADjunkie.com.
And in the third half, we'll talk to the man who, in my very humble opinion, put personal manufacturing on the map, bringing you the Design Factory, the founder and CEO of Ponoko, our very special guest, Dave Tinhave.
Welcome, Dave. An absolute pleasure to have you on the show with us today. If you could make a catapult on Ponoko, then use it to launch yourself into a bowl of cereal, would it be hot or cold cereal?
Generally, it would be cold cereal.
Okay, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
Good, concise answer. Stay put. We'll be hearing more from you as the show goes on. Josh Mings of SolidSmack.com. Launch our sloppy ignorance into the jello mold of knowledge. What have you got for us this week?
This week's SolidSmack Fact Smack is brought to you by Fortis 3D Production Systems. From your office to the factory floor, Fortis offers efficient digital manufacturing solutions for your business. Rock it at Fortis.com. So, this week we're talking personal manufacturing.
Meaning that you, everyday citizens of Gotham, can design and manufacture your very own products.
Yep, this week's Fact Smack will take a look at how it all went down.
Now, you may initially think of personal manufacturing as just a little off-site 3D printing.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Now, obviously, there are computer numeric-controlled routing machines and milling machines for cutting away material, but we've also got CNC sewing, circuit board making, and laser cutting.
The advent of personal manufacturing using these machines all started in about 1986.
In that year, Techno launched the first CNC router, and 3D Systems put out an additive manufacturing machine.
Yep, 2 years later.
In 1988, that would be.
Both Epilogue Laser and Universal Laser Systems brought out their wood-cutting small-scale laser cutters for craftsmen and small biz.
Now, jump up to 1994, and Z-Corp drops the price and color on the 3D printing industry. Now, initially, they used cornstarch and HP inkjet print heads to print 3D objects cheaply and efficiently.
And 2 years later,
that's 1998.
ShopBot starts designing, building, and distributing CNC routers for the impending maker apocalypse movement.
You saw the first Fab Lab at MIT in 2002.
Now, a Fab Lab is an accessible digital fabrication studio, kind of like a makerspace.
In 2004, you start seeing a slew of personal 3D printers slipping out.
Yep, kicked off with the RepRap project.
And then Make Magazine starts publishing in 2005.
A mere 6 years ago.
And just 4 years ago, the end of 2007,
Ponoko launched at TechCrunch 40, making digital fabrication possible via the web.
Which stoked the flames of personal manufacturing into a raging inferno of maker-centric sites.
Yep, sites like Thingiverse and MakerBot.
And Kickstarter kicked into high gear, along with distributed manufacturing network 100K Garages.
Which, as it happens, is a partnership between ShopBot and Ponoko. So, Dave, we'll talk about what Ponoko is and how it works in a few minutes, but first, what's the Ponoko elevator pitch?
The goal of Ponoko is to help people make things better. The idea here is that people are wanting to express themselves through products. We've seen people express themselves through a bunch of different digital formats, music, video, and design. And now we're at the stage where people are expressing themselves through making real product, and that's what Ponoko is about.
Now, up until now, I would think that, it seems like a lot of digital manufacturing, 3D printing, machining, has been more about technology than about enabling human creativity, enabling human expression. And it sounds like you guys at Ponoko are really emphasizing that latter portion. kind of bringing the technology back to the people. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, that's totally correct. It's a really vital part of what we do. The technology is great, and we all love it. But at the end of the day, it's a vector for expression, and really channeling that expression is our goal. And so that's why we don't focus on one particular fabrication type. We've got a whole range of different fabrication types. And that's why we put a lot of effort into building the community and providing content to, bring people on board and enable them to express themselves.
Wow. Now that is just getting my fab juices flowing.
Fab juice, huh? We're going to start bottling that up? Make a little bit of that?
Yeah. We'll be right back. Adam O'Hearn of CADJunkie.com. The time has come to counterbore the melamine of ignorance with the endmill of knowledge. What have you got for us this week, buddy?
This week's CAD Junkie Q&A is brought to you by Fortis 3D Production Systems. Fortis systems produce accurate, durable prototypes and production-grade parts using high-performance thermoplastics. See it all at fortis.com. Today we're talking with Dave Tenhava, founder and CEO of Ponoko. For those who don't know, Ponoko
at Panocha.com
allows you to design and sell your 2D and 3D product designs. Materials, electronics, and all that stuff is right there on the site. So Dave, you've told us kind of the high level of what you do. Now let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's say I go to Ponoko.com and I upload my 3D files and choose a bunch of electronic components that kind of will build up my project. I click submit, pay my money. What happens next?
So basically, we break down your order into stuff that we're fabricating ourselves, stuff that we're fabricating through third parties, and then the stuff that's being drop shipped from third parties. So so if you look at the electronics, for instance, that's drop shipped through SparkFun, who are our partner on that side of things, and they're very well known in the maker community. They're a great brand. They're doing amazing things. So they do the drop shipping of the electronic components.
So let me just jump in here for the lingo that for those who might not be aware. Drop shipping means that SparkFun sends it directly to you, right? The customer doesn't send it to Ponoko and then Ponoko sends it to me.
That's correct.
Okay.
So that's the electronic components. If your part had 3D printing components to it, then we route those to our 3D printing partners, and they start the fabrication work. Those parts are then sent to the Ponoko head office, where we batch them up and send them off to you. And then if your system has got laser cutting or your product has got laser cut components, we route it down to the laser cutter just downstairs, and it joins the queue where we then fabricate the parts there.
Okay, so I make, just to clarify that a little bit then, I make an order, and you guys decide where the parts come from. If I ordered any electronic components, those are drop shipped directly from SparkFun to my door. So that's a separate shipment that comes to me.
That's correct.
But then if I order any 3D printed parts, any laser cut parts, any other kinds of parts like that, custom made parts, then you guys ship those directly in one box to my door, let's say.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what does the shop at Ponoko look like? Where's your office and what's it like?
So we've got two offices. We've got an office in Oakland in California, and we've had that running now for about 2 years. It's a pretty industrial space. That's where we've got our US laser cutting and US dispatch. So we've got 7 people. We've got 5 people who work out of the office here. And then we've got an office in Wellington, New Zealand. Wellington's where Derek Ely and I started the company.
And that's where you're sitting right now.
No, right? I'm actually sitting in Oakland right now.
Oh.
If I was sitting in Wellington, New Zealand, it would be it would be 6 o'clock in the morning. So I wouldn't be as chipper as I am.
Right.
So in our office in Wellington, we've got the software design or the software development side of the company, and we have half of our customer service team. The other half of our customer service team is located here in Oakland.
All right. So you said you had 5 people in Oakland, and how many people down in Wellington are working on the shop floor?
On the shop floor, we've got 2 people who are dispatching stuff out of Wellington.
Wow. Wow, very cool. And so what's the most technically challenging part of the whole Ponoko process?
The real challenge is around the pricing side of things. So, it is a very technical process that does require some pretty heavy lifting on the software side of things. The next challenge is just routing the information around a distributed manufacturing system. So those are the big technical challenges.
Well, what advice would you have for a potential Ponoko user who hasn't used it before, that would kind of guide them toward a successful first project?
I think understanding the prototyping process is really important.
Okay.
The move to personal manufacturing has been enabled by an increase in people understanding the design process. But one of the subtleties of the design process that has often been overlooked by people is that of prototyping. And so, it really is a vital part of understanding how to use Ponoko correctly.
Oh, so making prototypes, making sure that you've tried your idea before you actually before you expect to get a perfect
that's correct.
Final product.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's finally time to make those life-size cutouts of my upper body.
I don't even want to know what you're going to do with those. We'll be right back.
All right, that's awkward.
And welcome back. Today we're chatting with Dave Tinhave, the master of make. Can I call you that, Dave? Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Founder and CEO of Ponoko, the world's easiest making system.
We asked Dave to come on the show because he's not only revolutionized personal manufacturing, but also lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, we've got to find out more about Dave's brain. And since we can't, cut him open and examine it, we thought we'd ask him a few questions instead. Dave, thanks again for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and what got you interested in design and manufacturing?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from New Zealand. New Zealand is halfway between here and nowhere. Basically, if you draw a straight line from San Francisco, you pass through New Zealand and then you hit Antarctica. So we're a long way from anywhere. And I make a joke of it, but it's actually a really important part of the story. When I sold out of my first company, I joined up with Derek, and we were looking at a lot of climate change projects. We were looking for the next project that we wanted to work on, and so we were exposed to climate change concepts a lot. And for a big part of the climate change thing is the fact that the carbon cost of products is starting to be made transparent. It's been something that was heavily subsidized for 100 years, right? And it has enabled some amazing things to occur. Don't get me wrong, but if you live in a country where there is a significant carbon cost to get anything out and to get anything in, you start to look at consumer society and you start to ask some really serious questions. How is my standard of living going to be maintained if I need to pay for, I need to pay significantly more for my stuff. And so that's kind of where we started from. Now, my experience in design and manufacturing is mainly through my experience of Ponoko, but it's also through my childhood. My father is an engineer. I was sort of surrounded by engineering topics from a very young age, and so that's where that particularly design has played a kind of a role for me.
Now, you've talked a lot about the early days of Ponoko, and I definitely want to hear more about that. But you were completely self-funded when you got started. Is that right?
Yeah, for a long time. Well, not for a long time. Derek and I had already had companies prior, and so we had made a little bit of money out of those, and so we had we reinvested that money into Ponoko. So the initial funding was from the two of us. Then we've had subsequent rounds of angel funding and kind of what is angel funding in the United States, but is kind of a VC light funding in New Zealand.
Okay.
So why personal manufacturing in the first place, and even more, why laser cutting?
Personal manufacturing kind of caught our attention because, going back to the kind of the core inspiration, we realized that what we wanted to do was create a system that allowed manufacturing to occur as close to the point of consumption as possible. And so when you kind of follow that thought process all the way through, you kind of end up at personal manufacturing. And so that's the key reason for that. Now, laser cutting we did because it was cheap and accessible. 3D printing at the time was still pretty expensive. We could get a laser cutter for orders of magnitude less than what we could a 3D printer. And so that's kind of why we chose laser cutting.
Well, can you envision a day when a service like Ponoko could be as common as Kinko's, or whatever?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, without a doubt, and that's one of our big goals.
The Kinko's of 3D manufacturing. Can you recap some of the highlights and challenges, and then what kept you going through those challenges?
Well, I mean, it's there is the associated insanity of running a startup that is a manufacturing business in the Western world, and that is that's been a real challenge. I grew up on Wired magazine, and so I grew up on the mythos, to put it politely, of Silicon Valley.
Right.
And when I got to Silicon Valley, I realized that it was all just a myth, and that was a bit of a painful experience. But you pick yourself up, and so the big challenge was kind of bootstrapping ourselves all the way through that process, through years of people being quite doubtful, or not people. That's unfair. Funders being quite doubtful about the veracity of our claims and what we had to offer. Now, the thing that really kept us going and has kept us going has been the fact that we've got amazing customers who are doing amazing things, and there are always dark moments in running a startup, and just at the moment of darkness, you just see something that one of our customers creates, and that's enough to go, what I'm doing matters, and what we're doing matters, and so it's that kind of picks you up and carries you forward.
Wow, now, you say you had years of challenges, but I would say that you've shown the success of personal manufacturing business model, starting with laser cutting and then bringing on the 3D printing, and now you have the whole personal factory that includes everything. And now there's the upcoming App Gateway. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so the App Gateway is a tool that allows developers to use our API to create their own vertical applications. So someone might have a passion for jewelry, for instance. So they can create an iPad app that allows people to design jewelry. And then using the Panocha API, they can then fire off orders to get that jewelry fabricated.
Oh,
so that's really the goal there.
So I mean, and what community aspects is Ponoko trying to bring on board, and how are users interacting with each other now? The big goal of our community, or our community effort, has been an education thing, and so what we've really tried to do is kind of spread the story of personal manufacturing and get people inspired. We've done some work in creating community tools, but by and large, what we're seeing is that inside of the makerspace, particularly. There are some great tools that already exist. There's Instructables, for instance, where people are able to share that information. So what we've done is encourage people to use those existing
community spaces to spread that sort of specific knowledge. Now, having said that, we've got a great forum that people actively participate in, and the goal there is for people to discuss things in a Ponoko-centric manner. So it's something we spend a lot of time doing. We've got amazing customer service, an amazing customer service team who are really there to guide people through the process, and so that's where we've put a lot of work, rather than sort of building a lot of software tools for it.
And do all your customer service people have really, really cute Kiwi accents as well?
They a lot of them do, yes.
Sorry, that wasn't awkward or anything.
So do you know who the youngest Ponoko user is?
It's not data that we collect, but there have been some really inspirational stories of kids, as young as 4 years old, creating a design and then having that design, with the help of their parents, created. And I vividly remember that as being one of those bright light moments. There was a design that came through, and the father wrote a blog post about what he had done for his daughter, and how they'd done it together. And it was just one of those, hey, look, if I die today, I've made an impact on the universe moments. It was pretty special.
Well, and we've actually had the pleasure of interviewing some actual Ponoko users on this show in the past. For example, Stu Fingerhut, who you may know creates amazing lighting. What are some really unique products you've seen people create through your interface? Well,
it is often the very deeply personal products that have been created that are the unique ones, and they're often products that have been created by a daughter and a father, or they've been products that have been created in memory of someone, and it's a
communication medium.
But it's an honor to be kind of a conduit for that communication, and that's meaningful.
Oh wow, that is really cool. You've got a real passion for entrepreneurship. Do you ever reach out to these users and encourage or advise them on ways to start or even grow a business from what they're doing?
We're doing that increasingly, through our meetups. We kind of use that as a forum to allow people to, basically come up to speed, learn how to use tools like TechShop, Kickstarter, Ponoko, to bring ideas, into the real world, and simple things like how to price stuff properly, and how to understand how to to get the best deals from your suppliers. In the beginning of 2010, Chris Anderson wrote an amazing 10-part series that we posted on our blog. Chris Anderson is the editor of Wired magazine, and he drew on his experience with DIY drones and wrote a fantastic series of articles that go into all these details, and we use that material a lot.
Now, you're also an advisor at Wellington MBA, and I imagine some students are looking for that magic $1 million business to just explode and be successful right off the bat. I know plenty of people like that. What do you say to them? How do you teach people about entrepreneurship, the work involved, and why don't you start by telling us why every day as an entrepreneur starts with vomiting? Or so you've said. I've heard this. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Though as of yesterday, I suspect everyone's looking for the $1 billion business that goes large. What it means is that, and I refer back to the myth of Silicon Valley, that I had grown up with. And the myth around entrepreneurship.
What is that myth?
It is the myth that you can create a great idea and instantaneously become a success overnight, and that it's there will be challenges, in that kind of Disney-fied way, and
Right.
you'll overcome, and et cetera, et cetera.
It's a caricature, maybe.
It's a caricature, yeah. There is an interesting pornography that goes on around startups and entrepreneurship. And one of the things that I really wanted to speak about and have spoken about quite often, and I've purposefully done it from inside of a startup, not on the other side, having been successful. I've purposely done it from inside. And the reason for that is because once you're a success, you tell the story in a different way.
All right.
And so by telling it on the inside, you tell it I've tried to tell it in as brutal a manner as possible. And that's where the vomiting comes in. It's kind of for the first couple of years of Ponoko, and in my previous company, you're so clutched by irrational fear that every morning, the breakfast comes up.
Wow.
There's no other, and it's a surreal experience because the rational part of your brain sits there and goes, there's no reason for this, you understand.
We know that if we give this time, it's going to grow.
It's going to grow, keep the lights on,
Right.
But there is this animal part of you that just goes, no, you must flee. And so it's learning to deal with that fight or flight mentality, and it's learning to understand risk, and it is learning that there are very few that the stories that we get told are aberrations. They're not the vast majority of the stories around entrepreneurial activity, and the vast majority of stories around are around normal people working really hard with fantastic teams to get their idea done, and to enter into service to their customers and their community.
Well, and I would add to that it's not just normal people who have to work really hard and have fantastic teams. Really smart people have to work really hard and have fantastic teams.
There's no tried as much as media would like to tell you that there is a tried and true way of doing this. There's a tried and true formula. There isn't, and really it's about just keeping the lights on and keeping yourself sane.
Right.
And just getting better and better at what you do.
Oh, that is great. So do you think kids and students are becoming more knowledgeable about manufacturing processes, or is there a way to go with this?
I think there's still a way to go. People are becoming more aware of manufacturing processes. There's no doubt about it. But, one of the things that's happened in our society over the past 30 years has been this real vacuuming of manufacturing knowledge away. This idea that we can all, subsist in a service, industry kind of space has meant that, people have stopped learning how to make things. And so there's quite a lot of effort required to bring that knowledge back.
Now, if you could go through all of that hell and torture again of starting this startup from scratch, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? It's really important to note that while it has been a lot of hard work and in some cases it has been hellish, there's no doubt about it. It has been and is, it is now and was even in the darkest moments one of the most uplifting experiences of my life and continues to be that way. So it is really important to point that out. What would I do differently? I would probably be a lot more pushy around people who said no.
Nice.
Because, in some cases, we're still here and they're not. And I would have, I would have fought for the idea much earlier on. In a different, Derek and I fought for the idea and fought for the idea all the way through the experience, and our team continues to fight for the idea, and we are successful, and we're doing really well. But there is a thinking that the person on the other side of the table is more knowledgeable about what you are doing than what you are. I would have come to that realization a lot faster, and I would have been a lot more bullshit around those people.
Or you might have been more willing to believe in yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
I've got one more question for you. What's the number one piece of advice someone gave to you that you were actually able to put into practice as an entrepreneur and startup?
I mean, I do refer back to Richard Taylor from Weta Workshop and his story around how those guys got to where they are, and they took really big risks, but they did it in a kind of human manner, and so it was this idea that running a startup is a human endeavor, and the money is important, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of really other important things too, and it's that advice that I've tried to hold close.
Excellent. Well, friends, we are out of time. Dave, having you on the show has been even better than that time Adam dared me to laser cut a suit for him out of salami while he was on the laser cutter. Thanks for being with us on the show.
Hey, thank you guys. It's a real honor to be a guest.
If you would like to send suit patterns cut out of salami to EVDHQ, please address those to Adam.
And if you'd like to send any other type of delicious cured meat products, please address those to Josh, engineer versus designer. Appreciate your comments. If you'd like to squeeze our head between a table vise, head over to engineerversusdesigner.com and crank away.
And if you'd like to see our eyeballs transformed into applesauce, be sure to like us, +1 us, follow us, or whatever, as social media has been correlated with a complete lack of vision.
The show is edited by the Simon Martin. Our theme music is by Ross Hartman.
We'll see you next week. And remember, without designers, engineers would wear milled aluminum pocket protectors.
Yep. And without engineers, designers would still think that engineers wore pocket protectors.
What? No way.
Exactly.
A production of EVD Media.